So booster boxes are normally the favorite product that everybody goes for. The question is, are the new modern packs worth it? Should you invest in these? And this will be predominantly to make a profit. Now, I don't necessarily like going in crazy detail with these because I think the card industry is very much all about profit nowadays. And I think the nostalgic vibe of actually opening a pack is slightly lost. It's not all lost because there is a lot of creators from TikTok, YouTube, even streaming where you can definitely see the passion behind the actual brand. But when it comes to making a couple of bucks, maybe making a little bit of an investment, and everybody's got to make some money nowadays, and if it is through getting your favorite cards, at least you're doing something productive with it. Now, when it comes to the modern sets, we've seen a lot of low-end prices, and I think that's one thing to take from all of this, is there is some very good low points that you can get in on. And personally for me, booster boxes are the favorite product to get in at, because they are, I wouldn't like to use the word safe bet, because they most definitely are not. There is products that you could buy and they just absolutely hit the floor. They never come up. Now, I would normally associate that with maybe something like a blister pack. There's very little value in terms of they're not going to 10x unless that set is just absolutely crazy. And then you look at even some ETBs don't really raise so much. Now, most products over the course of years sometimes do have a good upwards trend. Might be 1% on return, 5%. Some will be in the hundreds of percents. If we look through the base set from the original, and I wonder if you can do this on this site, if you can go with base set, because that is just the number one, obviously. It's been out the longest. It's definitely the first edition. When we look at it, yeah, I didn't think so. I was going to say, there is no way that they've got all of the data for that, but I can imagine if I go back to when, this was I don't even know when, was this 1999? But for instance, I was probably about 6, 7 when these fully came out. And I believe you could get a box. I've had maybe not a first edition box, but I've definitely had a base set box at around about £50, maybe even £100 for a box at some point. And now you look at the 20, 30 years later, if you've got a fully minted first edition box, you're looking at $250,000. Now that is what everybody's chasing. Now, the first things first is, we don't know, and nobody will know. Maybe there is certain trends that you could follow, and it might have some replication to this. We don't know if that is purely on the fact it is the very first set, it's first edition, so it's printing first edition of the first ever set. We don't know if Paldean Fates is ever going to reach grands. Like, it's a good shot that we see a lot of these booster boxes now. When we look at the Team Rocket returns, we look at Phantoms, we look at Expedition, Neo, they're in a pretty big up. Like, none of these sets would have been over £100 on release back then, because they just weren't that price. Now, inflation is a massive thing, so maybe even back then, £100 of that money might be £200-300. I don't know the full conversion of a 30-year inflation, but realistically, you would never have expected any of these sets to be hitting 10 to 20 to 30 grand a box. Now, if we dig a little bit deeper, we go a bit further down, you'll see Fossil, you'll see Jungle, you'll see obviously some is it Neo? The Gym Hero, sorry. And then we keep going further down. We'll start to see some X and Y. You'll see Phantom Forces, Team Up at 2.5 grand. Now, realistically, Team Up, that came out, Pokemon Team Up, what was the release date for that? It came out in 2019, 5 years ago. And I mean, if you're holding Team Up, if you've bought a crazy amount of boxes thinking, okay, well, these have got some decent cards in them. Now, 2019 was before the massive boom of COVID and kind of Pokemon collecting hit that new heights, with Logan Paul going into it, with other people going into it and putting a big kind of spotlight back on Pokemon. That would obviously be a very hard thing to replicate. But even if you go a bit further down, and we don't look at the grands, but we look at the £100 here. We look at Unified Minds. We look at Evolutions was always a clear winner that you could go with. But if you go closer to home, we look at Evolving Skies. Now, that one does have a massive, massive pull in it with the Umbreon. So that one was already going to be incredible. When we saw that Umbreon is number one, you've got then another £300 card, a £200 card, another 100 and another 100. you could almost guarantee that that was going to be the thing. Like, that was going to be the one to look at. And to be honest, it did take its time to obviously get up there. If we look at kind of the pricing from it, you look at the very start, $140. So we're looking at about 120. It's a pretty normal price for a box. We then look, a year later, so we go to April 23, it's doubled and a bit more in value already. We then do a whole nother year, and again, it's doubled in value. So you could have bought at any point for the first year and a half, and it still went up. Now, obviously, if you've bought in on the first kind of section, fantastic for you, but not every pack, not every box goes to that sort of value. So if we go all the way down right now, if we go down to like the 80, we look at something like a Scarlet and Violet. We look at that one, and right now we've not had it for the we've not had it for the full year yet. We're coming up on it in the coming new year. Obviously that one went up a little bit. It was never going to hold that sort of value, obviously, but we're now down to $90 in value. That for me is not a bad price to be looking at. When you look at something along the lines of Sword and Shield base set, if we can find that one, Sword and Shield, if we can find it. Sun and Moon, so it's got to be somewhere around here, surely. So let's go to the top, in fact. Let's see if we can find it from search. So if we go Sword and Shield base set, there we go. So, for instance, we look at the base set, 297. Now, even if we look at that right now and think, okay, well, I mean, that's held a pretty good value across the board, really. We're looking at 290. That potentially only goes up or plateaus right here. Now, if you have bought that at £100, 120, whatever the box came out as, that's a decent value to it. And I think the next layer that we've got to look at, if, for instance, we are looking at something like Paldea Evolved, that is going to be another one that we'll kind of go into, because we've seen it go up a little bit. Let's go Paldea, Paldean, no, I'm not supposed to spell that, no, Paldea. Paldea Evolved, and I'll go box. I've not put the A in that. Let's go A, and we'll see the booster box coming in at 140. Well, we know full well that came in at about, you could have got it at about $80 to like $90. TikTok obviously is another great thing to look at with that, because obviously then you're only then getting a deal downwards. So if you're getting a £5 off from the TikTok shop, you've got obviously people selling it consistently. That is going to create a bigger margin for you, let alone then buying multiple boxes at a time. If you buy a case, so I think that's 6 of them in one, that's going to give you a better margin as well. So the more you invest at once, hopefully the better reward that can be paid out later on in the long run. But we can see already the upwards trends of something like this. And like we were saying, if we look between the differences of kind of previous sets, so we look back to X and Y, we look at Sun and Moon, even to the point of something like base set, we are now getting so many special arts that are not only a crazy amount of quantity, some of them being incredible. Obviously the Magikarp's a big one, but even the looks of like Marill and looking at all the others, it's not necessarily even the value per card, because realistically we pick a random one, we go for Mousehold, say for instance. That card realistically is coming in at $8, so you could probably get it for about £6, £5 here and there. We look at something like Dinkatonk, we got $4. They add up for the whole set, but also you've got to open up multiple boxes to get all of them. Like that's just absolutely crazy. We look at the Magikarp, and I believe that is one of the best in the set. You're looking at $95, which is meaning buying the singles is technically better, but at the same time, people like to open the packs to pack the card. They like that specific binder card to be packed fresh from themselves. So that is already going to be a big price buffer, because you're not going to be able to get that in one box. Half of the time, you're not even going to get it in 5. It's going to be a lot of boxes to be able to do. Whereas when you look at the sets of, for instance, going a bit further down, we look at, say, the Sun and Moon base set, for instance. Realistically, there is some nice cards. You've obviously got the GX cards in there, some really good arts. But then you go further down into kind of like where the special art territory is, and realistically, you've got some very bog standard. Now, it definitely changes depending on the set. The Rainbow was definitely more of a kind of an iconic part of this, but that's all you get. So even though maybe the kind of pull rate might have been better, could have been worse because you've got less to go with. There was no double guaranteed reverse holo, there was no guaranteed holo, so obviously packs do become better in that sense. But how hard it was to get an Umbreon GX that now is $16. Is that harder or less harder than trying to get special arts in the brand new sets? We saw it plenty of times. We saw it with the brand new set of Stellar Crown. Very, very hard to get anything in this. Like, you can get maybe 1 or 2 decent cards, but realistically to get them all, you're opening up a lot of packs, which is just crazy to try and do. So that's going to have a big factor on what booster boxes do well. And to be honest, I reckon you could get just one of each and be absolutely fine with it. When you look across TCG Player, we see a lot of out of stocks. I think for me, if I was looking at kind of anything specific, I think Twilight Masquerade is definitely a fan favorite. I think even with it being a smaller set, that one's... Oh, no, it's Shrouded Fable. Twilight Masquerade is not a big set either, but Shrouded Fable was the small set. That's never a bad price to look at. The booster box for the base, I think, is a great one. Paradox Rift, I think Temporal Forces is coming in. A lot of the modern sets are at the minute at a decent price, and I think definitely if you can, I would be looking at it. Now, another good thing to always kind of imagine is, do you buy it on release or do you wait a little bit? That's always the biggest question that you're going to get. So for instance, if we was to look at... say we stay Stellar Crown because it's not been out that long. Obviously we... Oh, that's going to give me all the cards, isn't it? If we go for the box here, we then have something like Surgeon Sparks out. Of course that's going to do that. We have the Surgeon Sparks coming out, which is a massive, massive one with Pikachu on the cover. That's going to be huge. So obviously Stellar Crown at the minute is at 100. I think that is a good price to get it at. If you can get it any lower, buying multiple, getting it at TikTok Shop, I think that one could do well in the long haul. So that one for me is a potential as get it whenever you can. Some of them go up instantly, like you saw with some of the Paldean Evolved. They took a little bit of time. It did actually hit a dip. Sometimes it's good to wait. And maybe if you do buy it at the $120, the $140 mark, I think you should still be fine. Whether you are kind of fully invested in it or not is the big question. Like, for instance, if you wanted to double down with Evolving Skies, I don't think it would be the worst investment in the world. Like, that's just crazy to pay that much. But if you are looking at like $700-800, I don't think it would be terrible. Because when we look at a lot of these sets, the pack weight to try and get the Umbreon, the Rayquaza is so up there. It's just going to keep going up. Every time we get another box opened, another box sold and opened, it's just going to go up in value. It's clearly got a limited amount of stock now, and it will kind of do what Evolutions does, and it will kind of just cap out a little bit. I doubt we see a reprint, but it could also be that another Evolving Skies 2.0 comes out next year and raises the price even more because it's got that next level set to it, and you want both together. It's just an interesting one to see, and it all depends on how long you want to hold for. I think even Silver Tempest, and you look at Crown Zenith, always, I know Crown Zenith can't have a booster box, but a lot of their Supreme Premium boxes are always nice. I think the Surgeon Sparks will be a fantastic one to look at. When you look at the cards on this, it's mainly, you can only see it in the Japanese set at the moment, but whenever we've had a Pikachu, it's normally incredible. You've got the Pikachu EX in the normal set, but then you go further down and tell me that everybody is not going to want these two cards. That is going to be incredible, and that is incredible. Let alone then everything else. You got Hydrogen coming in as the EX as well. Beautiful card. I think the Rainbow Border is actually going to be a real fan favorite, let alone all the other cards that we're missing here that we've not got. We've not got the full list as of yet, but that's going to be a set well worth looking at. And then going further, we'll have more research on the brand new sets of Rockets. We've obviously got another Gym Heroes coming out. They're going to be worth doing anyway because of the nostalgic value from the start. The only thing I would suggest with them, and kind of like a further video ahead, is that there's going to be a lot of hype on day one. That always doesn't mean to buy in straight away. It could mean a lot of out of stock happens. So if that does happen, you may not want to panic and kind of wait for that stock to keep going, because Pokemon will know this is going to happen and they will sell, they will print an absolute crazy amount of them. So if I was looking at it, I think base sets, modern sets are the way to go at the moment. I would personally be looking across the lines of, if I can go back to English sets, I'd be looking anywhere in the Scarlet and Violet era. Obviously the 151's coming in quite expensive. I know that one can't have booster boxes unless it's in Japanese. I think that's an easy one to go with for the future. I've personally got 2 of the Japanese boxes. They were my first ever purchase of a sealed product, as I've got into now this kind of sealed product business, in terms of just holding them in general. I like having them. They're really cool to have, and the value of them more than likely will go up. The nostalgic of 151 will always be there. So whatever sets you can get from them, from evolutions to 151 to the base set, it's always going to be popular. I think Paldean Fates, whenever they come out again in the new set, whatever we get, that's always going to be really good just because of the amount of shinies that you can get. It's always a fan favorite, and I don't know what the prices of that is, but if we go, is it Paldea Fates, did I say? If we look at the box of that, it is Paldea Fates. Paldean Fates. Always get it wrong. If we go Pokemon Paldean Fates box, there's always going to be decent ones. Did it not have a booster box? Am I wrong in thinking that? It probably didn't. It might have been one of them smaller sets that I didn't think about, but did it? Paldean Fates boots. Oh, it was a booster box bundle. So that makes sense, to be fair. So again, even them, the booster box bundles, eventually they could go up. I would be looking potentially more at an ETB when it hits its absolute lowest, because they naturally are going to be quite good. But I would suggest any of the kind of modern Temporal Forces, Paradox Rift, even Paldean Fates. Obsidian Flames definitely gets a kind of a low budget on it, but I still think it's going to be very good. The base set's always really nice. And then even the new sets, I think Twilight Masquerade, Stellar Crown, as a new investor into sealed products, is always a good one to look at. If you've kind of got a bit more of a market eye, maybe looking at some of the Sword and Shield eras, X and Y is personally, or Sun and Moon, is out of my personal comfort to give any sort of information. I didn't really follow it that much. I predominantly looked at vintage and then in the modern, and that's kind of it. I just collect the cards from them. I think they are looking quite expensive, so I would suggest definitely getting your research in if you're ever going to look at buying an X and Y box, because already their inflation price is absolutely massive, as we've already seen. So that's something to definitely have a look at. You've got all the information on the price charting on TCG Player, and then obviously on different YouTube videos and also forums that you can go and chat on. But that's going to be everything. Let me know down below if you've got any sealed products, and I'll catch you all for the next one. Peace.